Right now, we're going to talk about Sukkot from the Kabbalistic perspective, and we're very happy to be joined by Avraham Leder, who is a scholar and a teacher and an author of all things Kabbalah. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
It's good to have you, and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
So listen, I could talk about Kabbalah all day long, and I know that your journey has taken you very deep to influence a lot of people around the world. What is from your standpoint, from the Kabbalistic perspective, what is so special about Sukkot?
I would say like this: to understand the significance of Sukkot, we need to begin with Rosh Hashanah. And what we're going to be following is the moon. Because Rosh Hashanah is really the only major holiday. Of course, we celebrate the new moon, but Rosh Hashanah is the only major holiday that comes out on the first day of the month when the moon is covered. Now, for us, in other words, those of us who are connected to the Kabbalah, the moon is Shekhinah. In other words, talking about God, exactly. Like the divine female, talking about God in the feminine, which is one of the major teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the sort of main protagonist of the Zohar. So the moon is growing, and we're with her on Rosh Hashanah, where we can't even see her. Then we're with her on Yom Kippur, which is the 10th day of Tishrei, and she's already more full than she is not. And then on Sukkot, when we come to Sukkot, it's full moon. So basically, this is a journey of the Shekhinah, of this female aspect of God growing and developing. And actually, if I'll just say one more thing, Rosh Hashanah is the day of birth of human beings. And human beings were created male and female, as sort of according to the Talmud. It was sort of androgynous. And on Rosh Hashanah, they're separated. So she experiences herself as a separate entity on Rosh Hashanah. And so she grows and reaches her fullness by Sukkot. And Sukkot, the full moon, when we're sitting in the Sukkah, we're sitting in what the Zohar calls Tzila Dimhemanuta. That means the shade of the faith. And the faith is one of the names we have for her. So when we're sitting in the Sukkah, it's actually we're sitting in the divine presence, the Shekhinah, the female aspect of divinity, totally engulfed in that in her fullness, which is why we're so happy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you even talk about, even in biblical history, there's certain stories of women, like the daughters of Slofchad. I remember doing a piece about them, and they're talking about all of these things that happened, during Sukkot, and this was when the, Israelites first came in to the land of Israel. So it's so interesting when you delve into, some of the hidden secrets, because that's part of it also is concealed light, and part of the concealed light is the divine feminine presence that we don't learn about in classic Torah.
Exactly. Exactly. This is why the Zohar was so important in that sense. Zohar expanded our way of speaking of the divine from calling God he to also calling God she, and also in the other extreme calling God nothing, the great nothingness, Ayin or Ein Sof, the infinite. In other words, something beyond personifications. So
yeah. So Kabbalistically, when we're talking about through the ages, and we know that, once we got into the golden age of Spain, Zohars were also being printed, and all of these, when you're studying a lot of the history, there was also a very active role, among some of the early conversos of women kind of being the ones maintaining, they say, the Kabbalah even at home during the time of the Inquisition. Would you agree with that?
To be honest, I think there were exceptions here and there. It's really interesting because these texts, like the Zohar, like the Lurianic texts afterwards, they talk a lot about what I was just talking about now, the Shekhinah that we're so connected with on Sukkot. However, they didn't really make the next move, which was to identify the Shekhinah with women, human beings, not just an abstract concept or a way of understanding the Godhead or divinity, but actually people. And this is something that's actually happened in our generation. I'd say in the past, 20, 30 years, women are scholars of Kabbalah. Women are embodying the Shekhinah. And that's really the first time this has happened. For them, it was more, there was an exception here and there, but it was more an idea.
So what is it that you share, with your students? I know you reach a lot of people. What is the main kind of takeaway message? Because we know a lot of people are finding Kabbalah, not just Jewish people. It's for everybody. What is your main takeaway to people that are finding their way to you, as to explaining that there is light in all of this darkness?
In general.
In general, like overarching,
Actually,
pearls of some kind of hope, glimmer of hope during what many people see as very dark times.
I personally am also interested in the darkness because I think looking at human reality, not just, hopes, but reality, darkness is a part of our life. And what is that in our soul? And how can we integrate the darkness? Here, what I was just talking about, Rosh Hashanah, when we don't see the moon, we're identified with the moon. The moon is not, the sun is on and off. The moon is changing all the time. She's dark, she's full, then she's growing, she's lessening. She's changing all the time. So for me, when I'm, if I could say one general statement about the light I'm looking for in Kabbalah, it's more the ability to accept and be able to flow with the changes of life, including the pendulum between darkness and light, and realizing that darkness is part of life.
What is the way, in your opinion, of kind of integrating it, like of having, for each of us in our own journeys and our own tikkuns, of having to really stare the darkness in its face?
Well, there's different parts of it. We have to face our own darkness, our own shadow side, as Jung called it. We have to face our own darkness. And we have to face mythical darkness, and we have to face the darkness of God, because often people identify God with good, but, you're going to identify with good and then let God off the hook for bad. So what do you do with that? So we have to understand how darkness is integrated into that. So, as I said, it's also a personal journey, and then it's also a journey of learning about it, becoming friends with it, of the darkness. I teach about the great sea creatures that are mentioned at the beginning of Bereshit. They are primordial mythical creatures that dwell in the sea. The sea is darkness also. So I very much look to integrate the darkness by means of myth and the Kabbalistic myths, which are great.
Right.
Awesome.
Now, getting back to Abulafi, I know that you said you've also penned a more modern work of Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. I know Avraham Abulafia from the 1200s, correct, in Spain?
13th century.
1200s,
you got
13th
it right.
century.
Yeah.
So you're saying he didn't like the Zohar, but he was all about the ecstatic Kabbalah. How is that different, what they were, the prophetic Kabbalah?
Right.
Through the letters, specifically?
Prophetic Kabbalah is a much better term, in my humble opinion, than ecstatic Kabbalah, because
then it sounds like you're taking drugs.
No, he definitely, Abulafi was interested in altered states of consciousness, but the Zohar is not. The Zohar is as ecstatic as you can get, So Abulafi is actually, if it was up to me, I don't know if I'd call him a Kabbalist. He's much more a researcher of human divine consciousness. And he actually saw himself as a student of the Rambam, Maimonides, and he was very rational. And he talked about what he thought he thought everything he said was basically science provable. And he was interested when you said prophetic Kabbalah, which is a much better term, because he was interested about expanding human consciousness to the point that it became one with divine consciousness.
Thank you so much for joining us, and Chag Sameach to you.
Thank you for inviting me. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.